right, everybody. Welcome to the FCA Locker Room, the show where we explore how faith and sports come together to transform lives on and off the field. I'm one of your hosts, Vincenzo Pepe, and today I'm joined with Michael Toro, our newest staff in the Hudson Valley in Westchester County. He's serving as one of our area reps down there. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about calling into ministry today and what does that look like, following God's calling on his life. When he says go, are we being obedient to it? And how do we know it's coming from God? Um, so the last couple episodes that I have done have been a little bit more geared towards staff, right? Like understanding the need for staff in the ministry of FCA and the people that we're trying to reach in the areas that we're trying to reach. So this will be kind of like a wrap up of all of that. You know, we had Steve Hines talking about what it looks like to actually come on staff and who the people that we're looking for. The last one I did was more about the need for for staff and how the harvest is plentiful and what it actually looks like, and we talked about some of the myths behind it. But we're going to hear today from Michael a little bit about his story, and I think it'll probably resonate with a lot of us on here, a lot of our listeners. So, Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me on. Good to
So, before I have you introduce yourself, I always like a fun little icebreaker question that we're gonna hit you with. So, if you had to go 1 month without coffee or your phone, which one is it going to be?
Oh man. That's um
'Cause I know
one month.
you like your coffee,
I
but I know
love
you also like you're putting out a lot of content, so I know it's tough.
it is. It's tough because I try to get away from the phone. But because of what we're doing, I gotta be in the phone. I would have to say I gotta stay with the coffee. I gotta keep coffee. Got, gotta keep the
Keeping
coffee.
coffee, ditching the phone.
Yeah. Yeah,
All right,
got
that might be a little controversial. I thought you were going phone for sure, to be honest with you.
right. I gotta keep the coffee. The reason being is because I do a fast on Wednesdays, and the
Hmm.
fast is to have no caffeine at all.
Yeah,
And it's a long day.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. I hear that one. So Mike, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you were prior to FCA, and then we're gonna jump into, your calling to FCA and stuff. But just let our listeners know a little bit about yourself.
Right. So prior to me coming on, I worked for an organization, um, one called Wine Enthusiast. I was with them for 8 years, and doing everything, basically technical support for wine refrigeration. So if you had wine refrigerator, it breaks down, you don't know how to use it, you need a warranty repair, you would call me and we would get it all arranged. I was also a parts coordinator and things like that. But realizing like there was a moment where I really felt like I was hitting a wall, um, like as far as my professional career. And then and then as God would have it, like he started pushing me closer towards what he's made me to do, which was to be not only at church and being an active member, but also to be a part of his ministry outside the four walls.
So you're saying you really felt you didn't know what it was at the time, but you felt like there was a calling, you know, to going into some sort of ministry to some degree, but you weren't sure quite yet what it was going to be.
Yeah, I didn't know to what capacity. Again, super involved in church, was with young adults for some time. I was doing VBS things like building sets and stuff like that. I was involved in Christmas plays and, again, just being active, but I knew that there was something more. And I had a pull on my heart like, Lord, this is 8 years at this job. I want to be out by 10.
Mm,
But I just felt I hit that wall, and the Lord was like, okay, eight it is.
yeah.
The number eight, as some of you may know, like in the Bible, it's a symbol of new beginning,
Mm,
which I didn't realize till just a couple weeks ago. So he was already moving things in the direction where he needed it to be.
yeah. So uh I wanna hear more about your FCA story, but
Mhm.
leading up to that time, right, where you're feeling this tug, were you praying about opportunities to come to you? Like what was kind of like your prayer and your mindset, and maybe just your heart posture during that time prior to, really finding out about FCA and pursuing staff there? Like what was it like? Was there prayer about show me where to go, Lord, or were you just kind of like just going with whatever the flow? What like how did it look?
Yeah. So when I first started going to the church that I'm at now, which is Harvest Time Church, it was prophesied over my life that I would evangelize to the younger generation, which had involved me again with young adults, the youth ministry, things like that. But I didn't know where, where it was leading. Kind of just going again, kind of going with the flow, but doing what I had to do, my due diligence as far as, you know, letting God heal things that need to be healed, remove things that need to be removed, and just following the best I could towards what He was leading me to, even though I didn't know where it was going.
Hmm, that's good. Um, so all right, so you've been praying this prayer, you're kind of looking for what God has for you. So how did you come to find FCA, and then from that, how did you say like, okay, like this is what I feel like I'm called to do?
Right. So with FCA, I had Ed Trask, who's part of the FCA. He's over in New England.
Yeah,
He
we've
was at
had
my
that on here before.
Yeah, he was in my church. So him and I great friends. His wife as well. Um, and so I knew about FCA. That was the first time I ever heard about it through them.
Hmm.
And didn't realize like God was showing me where we were going. He had Daryl Strawberry come to our church one time to just kind of have a banquet. He ended up preaching that Sunday, but again, still not really knowing that it was going in this direction. It was kind of just an introduction to what God had planned and where we were going. But then when the opportunity came around in 2024, um, I got an email out of nowhere from FCA. Never received an email before while I was looking for work, and I opened up the email, and FCA is offering every opportunity possible. And so I called Ed immediately, and I was like, "We need to meet and talk
Hmm.
about this."
And then, what were kind of some of the next steps then, right? Because I do feel like a lot of our staff, and it's always interesting to hear all of our staff story about like how we felt like we were called to ministry, right? So now you feel like, all right, this might be an opportunity that the Lord's presenting. How did you then distinguish, that this was your calling versus this was just a different opportunity?
Yeah. So prior to me getting that email, at this point I'm filling out applications like a mad person because I'm out of work. Um, and I want to say it was mid-June. I'm at the gym. I'm in between sets. I'm filling out an application, and I clearly hear the Holy Spirit tell me, "Stop applying for work." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
I need to work. I can't do this without working." And so, like, I felt it really, it really hit my spirit. But because we're fleshly and do what we want to, I filled out another application anyway. And again, the same voice, stop applying for work. And then 2 weeks after that is when I get the email from FCA. At this point, it was the only door that opened. I was applying for everything from, jobs that were, entry level, way below my experience level, to jobs that were a little bit above, and nothing, absolutely nothing was opening. And here, God had presented me with this opportunity, which was not even on my radar.
Mm,
Um, and praying about it, because that's what Ed had told me to do. He's like, "You want to pray about this?" He's like, "You want to fast about this because this is life changing. This is not just a job. This is not something you just do. This is something that you're really called to." And praying about it, and it got to the point where the Holy Spirit was like, "What are we doing? Like, I've been grooming you this whole time." And he showed me all those steps from the minute I joined my church up until this point, how he was grooming me, between being part of, young adults ministry, being a part of youth ministry, um, creating my own Christian content in 2023. So I got comfortable speaking on platforms like this.
hmm.
He was grooming me the whole way until it finally got to the point it was like, "Okay, now get out of the boat. Let's go."
Yeah. I think I think a lot of people sometimes like we hear that term like I'm called to this or called to that, and I think there's definitely some misconceptions about it. I feel like, um, and it's hard to know like when you're in it, right? Like when you're in that process, am I being called, or are these just like or are these just happen, or is these things just happening, right? It's just like my own flesh, like wanting this opportunity or whatever the case is, and I'm just kind of willing it into existence. But I think looking back and just hearing other people's stories about being called, and then some people ask me like, how do I find my calling? Like, how do I know this is coming from God? Even if it's not like a job, right? But just like how do I know like this is something I should be doing? It oftentimes is something that like we ourselves would not do or like not think of. So like I never thought I would be going into ministry. Like never in my entire life did I ever think that, right? I'm sure you probably felt similar. And so when there's something on our heart and on our mind that's like this is clearly not like my own thinking or my own doing, like that's probably a good sign that God's working in your life, right? And that the Holy Spirit's stirring inside of you because he comes up with these plans and these opportunities for us and these and this calling for us, but it's usually things that we never thought possible,
Yeah.
right? I mean, look at all the people that he used in the Bible, right? Look at all those people, um, Moses, right? David, Joseph, all these different people that should not have been in those positions, but they were, right? And even those people, they even tried to turn away so many times, right? And so I think that's something for people to keep in mind is like, is this something that like is just I can see myself doing it, but it's not something that I would have like necessarily pursued before, right? And if those are things that are kind of coming in your head, like then that's how you typically know, like, okay, like this might be God stirring in my life. And then you start talking to other people, and if they're kind of confirming, like, yeah, I could see you doing this, or this would be a great fit for you, like, okay, like now those other people that are not in your head and having the same thoughts, if they're kind of confirming that, like you might have an idea, like, okay, this is legit, like this is a real opportunity here.
Right, right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, no, just, again, an opportunity where, it's completely off your radar. Like it's not
Mm,
something that you were even thinking about. It's something that like, okay, maybe I can do this. I've always been that type of person. I've worked just about every type of job I could get into. Big or small. But this was something completely out of my realm. It was
yeah.
like, okay, now you got to go speak to people on a regular basis. You got to do this. You got to do this. You got to manage the back end. You got to ask for, do fundraising and all the rest. And I'm like, I don't know how to do any of it.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, there was this real pull on my heart, like to do it. And yeah, it was something that I had battled with. Like I felt the peace when the Lord gave it to me, and then instantly you feel that conflict and that tugging.
Yeah. It was definitely something on some of our last two episodes that we talked about like coming on staff and like how the support raising is piece to it and the ministering and leading Bible studies and building these connections and all those things. Like there's so many doubts in our head as we're coming on staff. Like, can I really do this? I have no idea. I have no experience in doing this. I've never done something like this. Like, is this too big for me? But it's just like it's incredible to see when you're obedient to what God is calling you to, how He supplies everything that you need. Right, the donors come there, the training and the resources and the experience and the teachers that you get along the way, especially in FCA. I mean, I'm biased, but like I think we have great teachers and I think we have a great organization that helps train us up into doing these things. But it's like when God is calling you to do it, He's going to give it to you, right? It's just, are you going to answer that call and get
Right.
up and actually go do it? All right, so let's just fast forward a little bit. So now you discern that this is God's calling on your life. Um, you kind of work through a lot of those. Can I do this? Can I not do this? How is that going to work? Now talk to us a little bit about like what the last year and a half has looked like for you up to today, now being on staff.
So after, I answered the call, Ed and I had went through some pre-training just to get more of a feel for it. Then after that, I was like, all right, like let's go. Like we're already in it. And so at that point, I had to do more training, which was really, really intense prior to going to the corporate headquarters in Kansas City. Super intense. Like I've never worked my brain so hard in my life. And it was like a deadline, and I had like 2 weeks out to do it, and there was a lot of other personal things going on. And I think I called out to Ed a couple times. I was like, I can't do it. Like I'm not gonna be able to get to the finish line. And he's like, all he kept telling me and encouraging me with was, keep your eyes on the Lord. That's all he kept telling me. Keep your eyes
Hmm.
on the Lord. He will guide you through. And so that's what I did. And it was a struggle, got that completed. and went to Kansas City for a couple of days for training with about 50 other people from all over the nation, including Canada. And then come back from that, and of course you're all fired up and things. And at this point, like there was a lot of, again, more personal things. I had lost my mother had went home in February of that year. Then my uncle had gone home in October,
Hmm.
like back to back. And I was like, Lord, like this is the time you call me. Like there was doubts in my head, like why now? Like I can't focus. And much like Jonah, I tried to run away from it. I was like, I'm not doing this. Like I'm not. And I had went to a retreat out in Pennsylvania, and so we get to the retreat, we get to the church location, and I go down the hallway, and they have this wall of missionaries that they're supporting. The first plaque on that wall was FCA.
Mm.
I'm like, all right, Lord, like, okay, so I can't get away from it. And
Yeah.
so that had encouraged me. And then about a month later in November, it was my birthday, and it was also my roommate, um, Brandon, who's in Syracuse. It was his birthday as well. So I reached out to him and was like, hey, it's our birthdays, happy birthday and stuff. And he's like, do you know what today is? And I say to him, it's our birthday. And he's like, no, today is FCA's 70th anniversary. And I'm
Mm.
like, all right, Lord, now you're showing off. Like
Yeah.
so it was just like at that point I was like, it's destined. It was destined. Fast forward a little bit, being that we're humans, I'm like, there's no money coming in. Like the fundraising is taking forever. Like I didn't know what to expect really. And so I started looking for work again. I was like, I could do something part-time. And as I'm applying for work, normally it would take, a month or so for them to deny me. Those emails were coming back within 24 to 48 hours.
Hmm.
So I was like, the Lord clearly showing me he's closing doors, um, and that I'm not supposed to go through them. Like, this is the door, this is the way, and we're going to stay on this path and we're going to go through it together. And so I'm like, all right, well, if this is what we're doing, then you have to show me how I have to die to myself to follow you, because I just don't know. I'm used to
Mm.
doing everything by myself. And he showed me. He started putting things in place, started moving things around in FCA, that more structure and more focus to what he wanted me for. And then things started picking up momentum the more I started taking myself out of the situation and leaning on him.
Mm. Yeah. That's great. And now, obviously, now you're on staff with us down in Westchester. You've started to build some relationships down there, some potential ministry opportunities. You're only a month in at this point, right? And so there's all these things ahead, and it's exciting to see um, the possibilities that are down there. I mean, Westchester's such a unique area as it is. It's so diverse. There's so many different types of cultures, and just honestly, just like you go from northern Westchester down to southern Westchester, it's like a different world almost. And then, you got a cool area to be in, and a lot of churches, a lot of people, but just so many, like, sports are huge in Westchester. And so there's just such fertile ground down there for you to be taking advantage of. And so we're excited to see what's happening about that. So um what could you do maybe, like what encouragement would you give to somebody who's listening to this now, and maybe they're not considering occupational ministry, but they're just considering how they could do ministry where they're at, right? So maybe it is a coach or an athlete, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's someone that just has a typical 9 to 5 job. Like what encouragement would you give them to live out their calling? Because their calling might be right where they're at, right? Which we know, but how would you encourage them in that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it well. Like, your ministry field might be right where you are, whether it's your job, whether it's your church, whether it's in your apartment complex, wherever it may be. Um, it's something that I would say, if you feel that pull on your heart to step into ministry, but you just don't know what it looks like or how it's gonna lead, I would just recommend like volunteering with your local church, volunteering with the organization like FCA, like if you have one in your area, and just get on board, see what it feels like, see what it looks like, see, is this really for me? Sometimes we need to see a little bit before we dive in.
Mm,
And that's how I would encourage somebody, because we're all called to a mission field. I mean, if you look through the Bible, we're all called in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And God has specialized us with unique skills and talents and our experiences that nobody else can go into.
yeah.
Like I have a friend, she's a pilot. Like she could go into a space that nobody else can go into because it's restricted, like literally restricted airspace. And she can minister to people.
Hmm.
So, just work, somebody had said to me when I first started this, what's in your hands? So what is in your hands? What has God given you so far? And work that thing. And then once God has seen you work it, he'll expand on it and give you more.
Yeah, that's really good. Um, a lot of people think sometimes I shouldn't put a lot say a lot of people, but I feel like it is oftentimes there's a misconception of ministry that it's, oh, well, that's a pastor's job, right? Or, well, you're the FCA person, so of course, like you're the one that should be doing this. But when you really look at it, like even churches are built on like a lot of volunteers, a lot of people that are doing ministry, like that are doing leading youth groups and young adults groups, like they're volunteers at the church. And FCA, like look at the people that are doing ministry outside of our staff, but like we have teenagers leading Bible studies. Like they're not working for FCA. Like they're not, their occupation is not ministry. Their occupation is a student. They're not being paid to do anything, but they're stepping out and leading that stuff. Or we have coaches doing it, or we have legitimate volunteers like helping with programs. And so I also had a pastor one time. He was kind of talking about this specifically of how we're to live our lives right as ministers of the gospel. And he had told a story about how they had a janitor at their church who was there, and or maybe it was out of school. It was out of school. A janitor at a school, and he basically had a conversation with his janitor and everything. And janitor ended up saying, like, "Listen, pastor, like, at the end of the day, I'm happy with where I'm at because my mop is my microphone. Like,
Mm,
I get to talk to these students and teachers all day long and get to know them very intimately because I'm here before school and after school. And I'm seeing the projects that they're working on. I'm doing all these different things. I'm helping them with stuff." He's like, so then I get to have all these conversations with them. He's like, I can't do that from, a cubicle somewhere. So it was just really neat. But that's not to say like if you are in a cubicle doesn't mean you can't look over to the other side and see who's in that other cubicle and talk to them. So wherever you're at, there's an opportunity. It's just, praying. Obviously, let's start with that. Begin with prayer. Be present with it and be consistent with it and seeing what God is leading you to do. Literally, like if it is like just reaching over and talking to your coworker, or maybe you are being called to occupational ministry to some degree if it's with FCA or a church or another organization or something like that. So I think a lot of this has been, I mean, it's been eye opening to me just to hear a little bit more about your story. I know I've heard it before, but just the way you've articulated it this way, and hopefully it was really helpful for a lot of other people that are maybe in a similar situation. And sometimes it's just like, man, like what am I doing? And sometimes it's just a matter of us thinking to ourselves, like, what is my calling? What am I supposed to be doing? And when you're starting with that question, when you have that question like stirring inside of you, that's a good thing. That's a good place to start. Because then that's where you're going to start seeking answers, and we're hoping and praying that you're going to seek them from the Lord and not from the world, obviously. So tell us a little bit, Mike. Like I know you're just, you're brand new to coming on staff for the most part. Still, you're still having a little bit of a learning curve and, still looking for opportunities in Westchester. But what are you excited about with your role down there? What are some things that you're excited about in Westchester? Maybe some future opportunities that you can, see FCA getting involved with down there.
yeah, I'm just excited with just bringing the ministry to people and making them realize like what we're doing. Again, being called and being prophesied over that I'd evangelize to the next generation. And then when speaking to them, seeing how excited they get, and them getting excited gets me excited. Or even speaking with people that you present it to them, and they're like, "Oh wow, like really, like you can do that," and they're curious, like
Mm,
because I don't think we're so busy, especially as New Yorkers. I think we're just super busy. It's like give us our thing and let us be on our way. But
Yeah.
when you give them something like this, it really causes people to stop and really think about what's going on. Bunch of exciting opportunities. Coming up, doors are opening with local churches. Have something coming down the pipe in August where we'll be presenting in Ossining to as many people that can make it what we're doing in Westchester. So I'm really excited about doing that and just building relationships, like seeing relationships that I thought weren't really going nowhere, but then having people circle back and be like, "Hey, I have some free time. Let's talk about it."
Mm, that's awesome. I think you just said it like where we live in New York, especially you a little bit closer to the city, like the environment is just so fast paced. It's so like just climb the ladder, be the best at whatever I'm doing. I have to make the most money, I have to be the most powerful, have the biggest title, whatever it might be. It's true, and like I have friends that live out in Midwest, and they're just like they're like what like how did like it doesn't even like it doesn't even make sense to them. That it's just literally that like people just bump into you on the street and just keep going like their heads down. Um, but I remember like when I was coming on and becoming the Hudson Valley director and you know asking God to give me the vision for this, right? And what it would look like. And sure, I mean there's obviously, more practical things like, oh, we want to start certain huddles, or we want to be in certain areas, and we want to eventually be able to run like sports leagues and club teams and things like that. But I'll never forget like if I could boil it all down to something, it would be especially for this area of New York, is being able to bring people back to a center of like what's important, right? Like finding the core values in their life, and hopefully it's through Jesus, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. But help people understand like what is this life really about? What should you be doing with this life? And it's not always run around as fast as you can and get as many things done, and have your calendar booked out 24/7. Like it's not always about that. It's about community. It's about finding relationships with people. It's about doing life together. It's about, giving your life to Jesus and seeing what he has in store for you. Like that's going to be greater than any title or paycheck that you're going to get at the end of the day. And I really do feel like we can do that through FCA. I feel like through sports, I mean, again, the area of New York that we live in, you down in Westchester, like there's so many sports opportunities, there's so many club teams, and there's some professional teams, and right outside the city, like there's all these different things, and it's just because of our culture and our love and desire and passion for sports, like FCA is just in an incredible position to just be lined up to really make kingdom impact here, soon. And we're on that page, we're on that trajectory, especially now with you being on staff and our staff hopefully growing here soon. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening, and I really think that we're going to see the Hudson Valley change through FCA because of God. And I think that's going to in turn, start to change more and more of our hopefully our region and our world as they continue to go out. But yeah, it's really exciting stuff. But anything else you want to, as we wrap up here, Mike, is there anything else that you just want to share with people, let them know, or I mean, yeah, honestly, even how can they stay connected with you? How can they follow along with what you're doing?
Right. So, yeah, so they could stay connected with me. I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. Just look for FCA Westchester 914. It'll pop right up. So those pages are brand new because I just came on staff in June. So still developing those, but you can reach out to me there. There's a link tree on there as well that will show you not only things that I'm doing, but also what FCA is doing. So you could get familiar with, what they've been doing, the history of them, the culture of it, and I'm just excited to see what God's gonna do in this area. I feel like there's a real drought for those, reaching to the next generation in ministry. And I also see a hunger in the next generation. Like, you know, my young adults pastor, Pastor Josh, had said it great one time from the pulpit. He says, sometimes we may be the only Bible somebody ever reads. So we have to take that into account. Like sometimes we may be the only thing that they'll ever hear. Um,
Hmm.
and so, just doing that and, you know, speaking with the next generation, like we want the next generation to learn from somebody that they know. We don't want them learning from TikTok. We don't want them learning from Instagram. Like those are good supplements, but they're not where it's supposed to be. They're not the
Yeah,
main thing. So, we have to be mindful of that. So, and that's what also helps, keeps my spirit burning. Like we don't want them learning from TikTok. We want them learning from and getting good discipleship, getting good doctrine, getting good counsel.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Mike. We really appreciate your time. And anyone listening, like, hopefully this was a little eye-opening just to hear from somebody else a little bit of a different story and their calling and just being obedient to God. Like, when God says go, it's now it's up to us, right? Now it's up to us. Are we going to be obedient to that call, or are we going to kind of sit where we're at and not step into what the greater plan, right, that God has for us and for those around us? So I really think that, we share a lot on this podcast about discipleship and just being obedient to God and hearing from God. But I think this was really practical, and I think it was really helpful for people listening, and I hope it was anyway. But yeah, thanks again, Mike, for joining us, and I'm sure we'll hear again from you soon. But thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. God bless you.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week.